they're going to know right away how to punish some of that stuff. But still, it's fun to see how things are developing, especially in other parts of the world.
I think you brought up this point already earlier before we got into the lineups, right? You were talking about how these curveballs are great, especially up against teams. I think I want to emphasize that point, who are very, very used to going up against the utility junglers, going up against a normal, standard composition. There's so much, I think usually in ID, Arashi brings this out a lot. If you know the rules of the game, you know when to break the rules as well. And that's where you get high-level MLBB, the tactical Arashi. Yes, those were the words that come out from his mouth, okay? But I'm gonna be using it here in for this match too, because sometimes these curveballs are great for your team, especially when you're up against a team who are not ready for those kind of cheese picks. So with the cheese picks, you kind of break down those rules, the core fundamentals of the game that you are already so used to, that you've understood to a T, gets thrown out of the window. When you meet a Hellcurt mid, when you meet a Yin Roam, right? You want to go for the retry battle, you do the Lord Dance, and then the Yin just gets you with a My Turn, kidnaps you, and that's what we heard from Swag too. Initially, they chose the Yin as a roamer just to kidnap the enemy jungler, the Karina, so that in these skirmishes, she won't be able to execute anybody, she won't be able to retry. And hey, that's actually something that it's definitely an intrusive thought, Usually we have these intrusive thoughts whenever, it's late night talks with the boys. You're talking about MLBB and you're like, yo, dude, you know what'd be really cool? You go for the Yin Roam and you just kidnap the enemy jungle when you want to go for the retry battle. So you just commit to every neutral objective and the Yin will just go and flicker, My Turn. And I've had this conversation with some of my friends. That's why I know the Yin builds full tech. So you're just there. You kidnap him and you force him into that 1v1 that will never end.
New meta.
You're just there standing.
New meta, kidnap Yin meta. Oh no. Dude, you know what's funny about that though? Is I already saw the clip from ESF on their social media, and it was a perfect preview. And I feel bad that it was Demon that was dealing with this, but it was like a perfect preview of dealing with that kind of meta. Twinkerbell on the Hellcurt, and when he thinks he escapes it, you do everything right. You bob, you weave, you survive, and here comes the Roam Yin. Doofenshmirtz, man. It just swoops in. That, it was a perfect preview of how that whole series had to feel. And I think it's really funny that you kind of talk about it that way, because it seems like even when we were talking to Swag, it was that was kind of the idea. And he was talking about their daily lives. We get a couple hours maybe here and there to practice, to prepare. It probably was a late night conversation where they're just hey, Swag, can we do this? They're just yeah, YOLO, man, just try it. Good. And it ends up working out. Sounds good. Run it down.
And it's so interesting to see just the amount, so much versatility, I would say, right? In all of the roles that we have right now. It is the most diverse meta. I think it's a very healthy meta that we have right now. And it actually does open up a lot of the probability, a lot of the chances for these crazy picks to come up. And we have been seeing time and time again, these crazy picks come up. It looks like it's troll, but then it works out so well. I think the Julian in the jungle as well. A lot of people have been already playing it in ranked. And for the most part, people don't know how to play it. Maybe they're just still experimenting on it. And you get a lot of hate when you try these new picks. But now, seeing it live in a tournament, man, I'm just really excited to see which team goes for the random pick, which team goes for the crazy picks first, right? Is it going to be Ivory Coast or is it going to be Djibouti?
Oh man, it's probably going to be Djibouti. I'm just going to assume it's them. But it's funny, you know what? I was just thinking about, as you were going into that whole tangent, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try Roam Yin in my next game, so I'm gonna give it a try. Because you were talking about the Julian jungle. I mean, especially when people saw that pop up in your region for the grand finals, guaranteed, or not the grand finals, throughout the playoffs, guaranteed that people picked up the Julian, after that. So I think even the case is here for the after regional qualifiers. Whoa, that ban threw me off. Yeah. Lolita being banned out here. Diggy also not so crazy. We do see Diggy banned out from time to time. Still a very great hero. Annoying to deal with and annoying to kind of get through that time's journey. But the Lolita ban, wasn't expecting that.
Definitely not. I wasn't expecting the Diggy ban as well. You know, this is something that we don't really see a lot in our own regions. The Diggy first phase ban. So Angela left open so far. No Fredrin ban, no Chip, no Loyi as well. We might just see both these teams duke it out. Just ego draft. Go for the Loyi, go for the Chip, or they might leave it all open. Maybe they have their own version of MLBB, right? Their own style of MLBB that they want to play. But we do have, you know, at least that hero, the most broken hero in MLBB right now. Usually, that's what we call him. The Harith gets banned out from the blue side. But by the way, just want to give a shout out to Team Djibouti here. I think I'm a big fan of Djibouti already. With Swag Boy, they also have Nah, I'd Win.
I thought you were going to point that out because I saw it earlier.
Yeah.
I have to give it up so far too. Just to day one of the African qualifiers, man. Like, they are winning in terms of IGNs. Nah, I'd win. So, oh man, I think we're almost, so we're almost through this first phase here. And with that next ban, it was the Barretts. So it's like, do you actually ban out Fredrin? Yeah, okay, they ban out Fredrin. So we are going into territory where it's not your typical utility matchup, at least in the jungle. And if we were talking about anything, if we're going to go down that path that we were going earlier for today, this is the perfect time to bring out those jungle picks and throw them in the jungle. Maybe this time we don't see the Carmilla or, you know, the Akai pop up. What's first pick going to be? Moskov was actually taken out. So with this first ban, the first phase ban Diggy, which usually, you know, we do see that in the second phase. I'm wondering what the plan is here. Like, what does warrant this first phase ban Diggy right off the bat? And because the typical matchup utility-wise is not going to be in the jungle, what do you go with here? Especially dealing with whatever Djibouti's going to throw at Ivory Coast. They're going to take their time into kind of deciding this. And I think really the fact that Matilda's still open, Angela's still open, the picks we were talking about before, man, the high impact those heroes have. Is this a sign for them to pick it up, for Ivory Coast to go this way? Esmeralda open too. They take the Loyi. Chip is available. So what's the answer here from Djibouti? Roger right away. Wow. They already knew what they wanted.
Wonder what Chip, they're going to pick next, right? Because it has to be Chip. Usually when you go for the Roger, you want additional teleportation prowess, but yeah, I don't know, man. Do they want to just try to... Do they want to call out the bluff of Ivory Coast? Do Ivory Coast even want to play the Loyi plus the Chip, right? Because in a lot of different games, yes, it's very, very broken to go for the Loyi and the Chip. But sometimes it gets to a point where your composition gets a bit too complicated, right? You are going to have to think so many ways. And sometimes that creativity can kill you. We get the instant big damn reaction there from Naisu as Flash for Dead hovers over the gourd. But this might be a tease. Remember, last time we saw the Ling, we saw the Hayabusa, and the Fanny. But yeah, exactly. They already have a Loyi, right? So where is this gourd going to go? Are we going to see a gourd roam? Are they going to take a page out of the randomness and the crazy style in game number 2 of match 2? But this time, at least for the Yin, I could understand. All right, the Faramis makes more sense as a roamer, right? You provide a little bit more utility to the team. You get another HP bar. Definitely makes more sense than the Gourd. But even then, the Faramis, with the changes to the Netherrealm, now needing a little bit more of the magic damage. You know, you scale with your magic damage that you build for the Netherrealm. It's no longer that crazy base damage that you have, but we get to see the Belleric. A lot of debut picks here in match 3.
Let's go, Belleric. Now, okay, I actually like the Belleric. Yeah, like I like the Belleric. I think it serves a good purpose. But like, think about it. Just look at this delivery option. You have diversion. You literally throw the Faramis and the Belleric. They're able to go ahead and pop off their ultimates, so you can actually force that team fight however you want, whatever entry point you're looking for. And again, this is the fact that you have a Minotaur across from you. You can actually go ahead and battle into that Minoan Fury and kind of try to outlast it with the Netherrealm, like if you have that, even with some of the changes there. But this is still relatively good because you know if a Minoan Fury set is going to be made from Djibouti here, you can actually fight into it. You don't have to worry so much about getting set up, you know? And again, part of this is what we're seeing so far, Mirko, is Yu Zhang is on point in this region. Like, they love this XP laner, they love this pick. And so far, every time we've seen it, it has really paid value and dividends to the teams that pick it up. So we'll see if the answer here from Ivory Coast is going to be enough, and how they really want to kind of round up the line out once they get there through this next banning phase. We saw that Xborg was taken out. Good choice. Again, dealing with even this Yuzhong pick, dealing with some of those chunkier heroes like that Minotaur, using that last Insanity. But since that's taken out, I'm also wondering, with this already kind of unorthodox lineup falling into place from Ivory Coast, what is your XP lane going to be? You know, and for the Belric, like, could you actually flex him into the XP lane? Like, would you want to do that even against the Yuzhong? I think you would just get bullied, you know, completely.
That was what I was gonna say before you mentioned it, right? Technically, the Belric is still a flex pick right now. They can still use it in the XP. It's not normal to bring it in the XP, but heck, the Belric ain't normal anyway. Right? So, exactly. So if you want to play into the chaos, just go full chaos. Double down on that chaos. And another interesting choice of ban there. We saw the Lolita ban. That was already very, very interesting. Now the Kimmy as well. That would be interesting. If they actually went for the Kimmy, if, let's say, you know, Djibouti did not ban the Kimmy, then technically for Ivory Coast, they would have 3 magic damage dealers with the Kimmy, the Loyi, and the Feramis, right? You would expect them to actually leave the Kimmy open, even if they know that Ivory Coast is really good on the Kimmy, because then there's a bit too many magic damage dealers. But hey, speaking of magic damage dealers, this is another magic damage dealer that we haven't seen in a long time. The Veil gets locked in, ladies and gentlemen, and who better than to utilize the Veil with white hair than I'd win.
Oh man, when was the last time we did see a Veil? Like, and you know what's funny about it is, like, just because you haven't seen him in typical competitive play does not mean that the value of this kit that Veil brings to the table is going to pay a huge value to the lineup they already have. And this is funny because we talked about the Clint earlier. You know, this was kind of a surprise for you when you were casting earlier for the other region grand finals. But this is the thing, like, Clint pops up, they lock it in. Whoa, and Amon! Amon! This is a swag pick, if ever. This is... this whole lineup, I actually don't know which lineup I like better, Mirko. I cannot decide, because both have their pros and cons. But you said it earlier in the draft. You're like, if it's any lineup, it's going to be Djibouti. Like, you're already impressed by them. Look at what they brought to the table here for game 1.
Man, I mean, there's so much damage output, honestly, for Djibouti, right? That's going to be very, very good for them. They'll have so many ways to actually fight in these team fights, to dish out damage in the team fights. But we have to remember that for the side of Ivory Coast, they have Flash for Dead on the Feramis, so they have another layer of HP to play with. On top of that, they have a very, very tanky Belric. And I think that does confirm it, Naisu. We will be seeing a Belric in the XP, not a roam Belric, not a... not an XP Feramis. That was something I had in my mind as well. I don't know if that was, you know, something that they were thinking about as well. But hey, we've got such an interesting draft. I think we'll put it at that, right? It's a very, very interesting draft. I think, funnily enough, the team with the Veil and the Oman is the more normal side compared to, you know, the Belric, the Feramis Rome, a little bit old-fashioned with that Feramis, and we were talking about that. I don't know, is it? I think the Belric XP has to be weirder than a Veil mid, right? I mean, at least for Oman in the jungle, we know that he has been played in the jungle for a long time.
That's true. That's true. Well, we're gonna find out here, jumping into the land of Dawn. It's the last match of day number 1 here for the African regional qualifiers. The road to Casablanca, Morocco here, all the way to WEC 2024 in Riyadh. And now it comes down to this Ivory Coast versus Djibouti. And as we look them get set up, yeah, I mean, well, hold on. Wow, already a lot of early poke, of course. But man, yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. Like, I think as weird as the lineups are, you're right. This lineup here from Djibouti is more of the what we're used to seeing, at least. You know, Amon has been able to actually do quite well, even in some of the matches that we see in regions that we see dominant, you know, in internationals even. So I'm really curious how Swag Boy turns us Amon into to work for the team, because I don't know, I'm becoming a believer, man, in swag. You know, the swag junglers from Africa right now doing really well. And even the Belric matchup, Yuzhong has been a problem in the XP lane all today, man. And I think we might see if Ambitious has the answer to that. I mean, he's getting poked down like I expected to deal with this, especially early on. But, you know, I'm just wondering, how does this Belric come into play from the XP lane? We're so used to thinking like, okay, Belric's going to be locked in. He's going to be Roam. He's going to have Vengeance. Oh, hold on.
Oh,
setups.
Good Curse of Blood onto 3. That's an endless shard as well. Swagboy still able to escape right now as the Lycan form gets popped by Shanks. He's trying to get that execute down, but Flash for Dead is a bit too far. Something I do want to point out, though, before the turtle spawns, Naisu, is the fact that Flash for Dead, early on, at least when we saw the items get flashed up, he didn't have the roam boots. So I don't know if he wanted to just delay the roam boots so that he can get a little bit more gold in the mid lane, maybe possibly get level 4 with the other members, or if he isn't really interested to go roam boots, maybe we'll have 2 mages in this game.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering too. Like, is, you know, in terms of that, we have seen iterations of damage fairness, like, which is weird because you're thinking, okay, well, you already have a low E, you already have quite a bit of damage, but we'll have to see how he kind of builds up. They might give this turtle away. They're actually gonna fight for it.
Good Furious Dive and a good Windstorm as well, catching everything. But now with Wrath of the Dryad and the Curse of Blood, good combo in to secure the neutral objective. Black Dragon form still going to be used up into the back. Not able to find that Petrify on anyone. It's a small victory here for Ivory Coast. Dexter, though, jumping in, forcing that flicker out of Ambitious. 78.
Yeah, I think that's you know, still my biggest question mark. How's this Belric going to work? So far, he burns the flicker, but he's going to at least get away with his life. And again, Dexter didn't have to use the Petrify, didn't use that at all. Things kind of already still working on those first items falling into place. Now, one thing you are going to have to look out for too is how fast can both these teams hit their power spikes. I mean, when you're talking about Swagboy being on this Amon, it's an assassin jungle for a reason. Like, you want to be able to provide that burst. We saw a glimpse of how much damage can be provided with the shards, but hasn't been able to get that kill just yet. But I think that's why, you know, as we get to this point, now that the level 4s are available, you have Minoan Fury available on Brune. This is a big point. This is like a turning point in the game already. No one's died just yet. Oh, hold on. Whoa, there's some action.
Endless Shard's gonna be used up, but it's onto the wrong member. Good Windblade though, as Shanks jumps in with Lycan, Pounce finding one. Curse of Blood to disengage, but Angie will still be able to escape there with Vincey doing some damage. He does have the flicker. Does he go in forward? Ooh. Flicker forward! What? But now straight into the Petrify of Dexter, and Shin will be taken down as well as Swagboy gets the last few hits onto him. But a bit of a quick update here. It does seem like Flash for Dead, he just delayed the buy onto the roam boots. He does have the roam boots now.
Yeah. That, oh man, I'm surprised Vincey went in. Like, he flickered in forward, and, you know, it was unfortunate because the rest of the team kind of knew he was going to do that, right? Like, they baited it. Hold on. Vincey again.
Wow.
Okay. Like, this is tough, Mirko. This is tough for a Clint. What? Oh my goodness.
Another endless shards right into the diversion. They played into that. I think they thought Swagboy had used it earlier to get rid of Vincey, but Shin miscalculated. Nah, I'd win. Just munching on a turret in the mid lane. Full turret shield for Nah, I'd win.
What? Like, I didn't even realize how fast Swagboy was able to take him out. Yeah, you were right, because, you know, just the amount of bursts, and this is what I was saying, you pick up these assassins, especially Amon, that's the whole plan. That's what you want to do. So you're already doing, you know, everything you have to in this part of the game, where you transition to have a very smooth mid to late game transition later on. This could just be, you know, of course, an easy turtle for Djibouti to go ahead and secure. And I think this is also a really difficult time for Vincey, because you now have to deal with this. Diversion play was used down bot towards the turtle side, but they're just gonna wait there patiently. Ambitious, quite tanky himself. They're just gonna kind of poke back and forth, but look at this. They're not committing. Djibouti's not gonna commit to the turtle yet. They might just want to fight something out here. Oh,
he's gonna go on Shin, has an endless battle, pops it, but another realm saves him in time. Good timing by Flash for Dead, but it's a flicker burnt out from Shin. And meanwhile, this non-lane in the XP lane, just a battle of sustain continues.
Hey, that's like, maybe that's the answer. Oh, they actually wanted to fight for it.
Minions Fury with the Curse of Blood as well, but Swagboy this time will be able to pick it up. Meanwhile, Shanks just clawing at every single member with Windblade used up as well. Angie, can he escape? Shanks now with the last few shots, unable to find it, but can go to the Lycan for Vincey. And Angie will be caught in the last wind blade by Nah, I'd win.
Yeah, he won. He won that placement right there, man. What a placement. What a setup for the wind blade. Oh, man. And that's the thing. You see this kind of unfold. We've seen this so far from the previous 2 matches, Mirko. Exactly what happens here. And so with this lead that you see, Djibouti already has gotten themselves. You know, we're talking about 7,000 gold at nearly the 7-minute mark. Swagboy.
Oh, Endless Shards almost takes Vinci out. And that has zoned them away from his bottom lane tier 2. Swagboy still trying to run away right now as the sun connects with the Curse of Blood. Swagboy will be taken out. Good dispersion by Shin to retaliate. And finally, after 7 minutes, Ivory Coast are on the board. But Win gets a wind blade with Storm. Boom! A flash for dead. Taken down. An assassination by Nah, I'd win.
He's still, every time he gets killed, he's winning, man. He's got it. And right now, this Veil is just, how do you deal with that type of burst? The windstorm alone is enough to just kind of take down at least half a bar of any of these members here from Ivory Coast. And so, like I was saying, you know, when you get to this point, you have this kind of lead for Djibouti. They're playing around the lead really well. I mean, yeah, they're taking some chances. We saw Swagboy do that earlier. But that's just them playing around the lead. That's them playing with this type of momentum. That's a Divine Glaive also, by the way, picked up by Swagboy. So now, those times he's missed that little bit of health with the Endless Shards, now he's probably going to get it, now that he's locked in a Divine Glaive. So this is a little bit tough for Ivory Coast to kind of deal with. Hold on, mid lane.
Good Windblade and Windstorm as well. 3-man Curse of Blood though. Good re-engage coming down as Swagboy goes into the midst of it all. Pops into Endless Blade and will be able to catch Vinci, but he's still able to flicker out to safety. Now gets caught in the dispersion. Brings him back just a bit. They will lose Shanks, but that's it. Just one member lost for Djibouti. And it seems like in the resource department, they've actually won. They're still controlling the map despite being one man down.
I would say, like, even with that exchange in the mid lane, it was good that Ivory Coast was able to withstand it. Like, that was a lot actually thrown at them, and given the whole, you know, gold gap that I was talking about. But right now, it's really, they don't want to play into this. Swagboy's waiting patiently. They could have started up the Lord, but they're going to fight once again.
2 knockups straight up, man. That's a knockup by Nah, I'd win. Another Windblade as well, and he can pop in a Windstorm, but he gets dove on by the Wrath of the Dryad. That's a good shutdown by Ambitious, but Brun will be taken down. Endless Shards from Swagboy into the back as Dexter gets rid of them, gets a sustain, and look at that! He's still able to survive, making it a 3-for-2 trade in favor of Djibouti as Swagboy continues in towards the enemy jungle, steals away that purple buff, and should be looking at this Lord, but he'll take his time. Not really in a rush at all to go for these neutral objectives. He'll go to his own orange buff first.
I think it's still, like, also, in a way, even with the lead, it's like they're kind of playing it a little safe. And this is something that we haven't been able to see so far, like, throughout the night. I mean, think about it. We're almost 10 minutes in, you know, and a lot of these games that happened in the previous matches ended off that first Lord. So now we're at a point where, okay, this is going a little bit longer. Djibouti did have a pretty good lead, but they're not actually committing on this major objective just yet. So that actually gives a good kind of window of opportunity for Ivory Coast to kind of play around this. And part of the plan too from Djibouti might be like, hey, we got to get this tier 1 down. We have to deal with this turret, get it down, so we have that little bit of an advantage to work on this Lord. So it's actually going to be started up, but they might just kind of force them back once again. Look at the placement as well from Swagboy. He might just go and try to make a burst play if he can. It looks like he might do it.
If Angie catches him or Ambitious, it's not going to be a good maneuver. Swagboy using that mobility of his. Pops in a bit of damage onto Angie, but will not commit onto any more of those abilities. They're just constantly shoving these waves nicely. They're playing the macro game. Very disciplined.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like, so far for this evening, this is the most, like, macro play that we've seen, where it's just not these, like, all-out battles, skirmishes resulting into a one-sidedness. Ambitious 78 will spawn him out, but still, it's pretty much this. It's like, hey, Djibouti holding it down the line. Diversion gonna be used.
And Ambitious actually baits out a couple of abilities, pops into Wrath the Dryad as well, and that's gonna be Minish Fury knocking up one member, only one. Endless Shard still available, pops into Nether Realm. And that might be a bit too late. Shanks will be able to get rid of the back line, and the Nether Realm that's going to be used up will just be decimated just like that. A good knockup onto Angie, and a follow-up comes through. Look at the damage coming down, and Angie will be taken out again by I'd win on the Veil. 2-for-0 in favor of Djibouti.
And he's landing those just on point, like the wind blows into the wind blades or vice versa. And he's finding those knockups really well. So right now, that's going to be the Lord secured here for Djibouti. They took a while, to be honest, so far from what we've seen today alone. So it took them a little bit longer. We get to that 12th minute. And so now with this is still them having a relatively good lead. Again, as long as that took, the fact is Djibouti still has a massive lead in terms of economy and gold to work around with. So what this could most likely result in, if Ivory Coast can pull it off, is actually they just lose, some of these turrets, the outer turrets, the shields might get popped. Maybe they lose one base turret, depending on how Djibouti plays this, because they have the tools to actually force a fight even in the base. I'm just not sure if they actually want to go and throw it all out, because Swagboy fully buffed up, ready to go. Oh, he's going.
Vinci, can he survive this gank? 2 members, and that's a little bit of damage. Swagboy, deleted. A good windstorm though to catch Vinci, and Shanks will be able to finish him up now with the Lycan form, chasing all the way into the back line with the Lycan pounds as well, but will be caught in that stun. He actually dashes out to safety quite well, but the Curse of Blood damage is still bouncing back and forth on Djibouti's members. I'd win with a good wind blow, knocking Ambitious out. But take a look at the Lord, just swinging his axe on that base turret. He should be able to take the turret down for free. With the first Lord, Djibouti have cracked the base turret up top open.
Yeah, that's, tough to see for Ivory Coast. Even looking at the items real quick, you can see exactly how far they are behind in some of these lanes, actually across the board. So for Vinci, we know how much of a hard time he had in the early game. He has to catch up. He needs to be able to provide that damage. He's only got the Endless Battle. He's also got the Blade of Hepsies. He's working on his next item because it's crucial. He's going to be the one to really kind of provide some of that damage in the base. Meanwhile, you still have that interesting combo we talked about earlier, Louis Yi alongside the Faramis. Genius Wand is there to help with some of that magic resistance that's being built up. You can kind of work through that, but still, you're really relying on Vinci to get to the point where you see the traditional gold laners start to pop off. And right now, honestly, I'd say maybe in a couple, maybe 2-3 minutes, he's actually going to be in a better position. It's just I'm not sure if he's actually able to go ahead and solely defend against the next Lord push. Now they still, like I said, you still have almost half a minute to kind of deal with that, kind of stall things out, because that's what has to happen here for Ivory Coast. If they really want to turn this game around, they have to stall this out. Guys, they have no turrets. Remember, there's no turrets, there's no space for them to work with. They feel so just kind of bunched up in the base, backs against the wall, literally, against Djibouti. And that's why they just own this side of the map. They can just play around it, deal with it. Do they actually want to fight this, though?
Good stun with the Curse of Blood, connecting onto 2 Endless Shards, only connecting onto Angie, who's the frontliner, and look at that, the Veil! I'd win has been taken down with the Desperate Minions Fury. Brun will be able to flicker out to safety. That's a Black Dragon form as well, just used up to escape from the skirmish. Remember, for Djibouti, they've been in the lead, they've been controlling, they've been dictating the pace of the game, but all their team fights have been reliant on one cycle of their cooldowns. Now Shin able to flicker out of that Furious Dive Petrify combo. Those tough boots doing work. Tenacity to get out of those CCs coming in from Dexter. And it looks like Ivory Coast want to push on the tempo. They want to go for the Lord right now that has spawned in the game. Ambitious 78 trying to zone right now as Dexter jumps into the backline with a Furious Dive onto Shin, who's still able to survive, getting the shielding down with the Dispersion. Curse of Blood backing them up again, and Dexter will lose his immortality. Lycan pounce though from Shanks. Still trying to deal some damage on the Flash for Dead with another Lycan bounce baiting on another realm. Meanwhile, the rest of the team of Djibouti trying to deal with Ambitious 78, who just cannot die. But look at Vinci, who's forced to flicker out. Shanks will flicker as well, and Swagboy comes in with a cleanup, looking to go for another 1 Endless Shard, and last attack onto Angie to take him down. Vinci running to the other side of the map. He's getting cornered by Swagboy, who's just running him down. Vinci with a kite, with some damage on the Swagboy. He should be able to kite as well, but look at the flicker from the I'd win. Windblade not enough to catch a Windstorm as well. 2 last hits. Meanwhile, the base, Ivory Coast, they asked the question, would you lose And for now, Djibouti, they answered with, nah, I'd win.
Oh man, did they just buy enough time to actually stay in the game here? It looked like they were actually going to end game number 1, but it turns out Djibouti cannot end it. So they might just make a beeline right to the Lord. They know that there's still some time here. Members of Ivory Coast are going to come up, but they do have quite a bit of damage available to them to go ahead and start up this Lord and take it down as fast as possible. But we might possibly see even a diversion play going to be utilized here, unless they just take the defensive route, and it looks like they'll do that. So Ivory Coast clears lanes, preps up, gets ready for a defense. Mirko, this is the closest game we have seen tonight so far. This is, I know, the longest, the closest, like even with the fact that you had Djibouti have quite a bit of lead earlier on, there's still some fight in Ivory Coast. They were actually able to win some of the fights, but still, Djibouti, the way they played that last exchange, that last team fight, is what helped them really kind of get the reins back under their wings here. So now Lord down in the mid lane, this is where it comes down. Half health on the base as well. So they could quickly push this in and end it. And we'll see if they do that just here.
Oh, the Brave management. Isn't that clean? Minus Fury Flicker combo, knocking 3 members up, but there's going to be another realm as well as Ambitious 78 tanks up a lot of damage, but this time isn't able to survive in the back, and the shards right into the Dragon Tail, and look at Dexter, who picks up a double kill, and a good Petrify onto Flash for dead. The base wide open, and Djibouti finally in 17 minutes gets it done. First game over to Djibouti.
As we said, longest game of the night so far. And it was a fun game. It was a hell of a fun game. Great drafts, but Djibouti took them a little bit longer, but they finally ended there. And that's what I was saying. It was good work. Like the whole exchange before they actually took the Lord was what allowed them to get to the point in the game where it's like, all right, now that base is half health. We don't actually have to win this fight coming up into the base. We need to get the Lord there, and then we can just knock on it, get that win. Because it looked like, again, if it was dragged out another few minutes, or maybe a mistake was made, Ivory Coast could have actually ended up winning a fight, turning things around, and getting into the base of Djibouti. Unfortunately for them, they had a hell of a start. Even for Vinci, man, like that was not the gold lane experience. He did not have a good time. And I think the Amon was a huge part of that. Anytime you have an assassin, your gold laners are not going to have a good time. Like you're not going to have, this kind of game, this laning phase where it's like, all right, I don't have to worry so much. Anytime an assassin is picked up, you have to constantly be watching your back, and your team has to help you for that. Unfortunately for Vinci, even one time when he died, he was going back to lane, and then that's when, boom, you're dead again. And it kind of like snowballed from there. So it took him a lot longer than most gold laners. Like when you talk about the timeline of them building up to their power spikes, it took Vinci a lot longer to get to where he needs. So then what you're doing is relying on your Faramis and your Louis Yi, and unfortunately for them, they just didn't have enough of that damage to win some of those early fights. And so really, I would still say, even for Ivory Coast, like it was still a good game. It's just if they needed to fix the early game a little bit more to really kind of hang in there. But so far, that's our longest game as we, get here rounding out day number 1. And I think it's fair to say, like that could have turned around very easily for Ivory Coast if mistakes were continuously made from Djibouti.
For sure. Absolutely, that was the case, right? I mean, for Ivory Coast, they were actually holding their ground really well, even towards their defenses, right? Yeah, they have the Faramis, they still have that Lo Yi, and on top of it all, great wave clear from the Clint. So I think even Ambitious 78, he was doing a good job at just standing in front. But unfortunately, I think for Ivory Coast, they were looking to send this Belleric to flank most of the time, and that kind of hurt them as well. Because I think if the Belleric played the way that we're used to knowing, for the Belleric, the way to just pop the Vengeance, use Vengeance number 1, that's first, right? You don't look to catch anyone. You look just to act as a front line for your solid back line. I think that would have worked a bit better for them. I think they were a bit too creative than they should be. I think they overthought their composition because for the most part, Djibouti were struggling to get through Ambitious 78 without the Vengeance. Imagine if you had a Vengeance, right? I think if that did happen, if they did have a vengeance on Ambitious 78 and he was able to survive longer in that final fight, Vincey would have enough damage, would have enough time to deal the damage he needs in that team fight to maybe look for the turnaround.
And so I don't know if that answers our question earlier, Mirko, is like the Belric in the XP lane. Like, is this something that we're possibly going to see again? Like, do you feel like this was the answer for the Yu Zhong that has been dominating so far throughout the day? Like, I don't think it is. You know, I don't think that was the answer. It was a good effort. Like, I would be like, you know what? Yeah. It was nice to see. Try to attempt it, maybe. But I just feel like if you're going to pick up Belric, like, just throw him in the roam. Pick him up in the roam. Take a vengeance if you want to. And, you know, and then roll with that. And there's so many, like, when you think about the XP lane and what I love about XP lane, still, I think it's probably one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful lane in the overall, you know, essence of a game. There's so many heroes that fit in the XP lane right now. There's so many possibilities that you can pick up. And I'm surprised we haven't even seen a Paquito yet. You know, because Paquito alone is a great option, especially what seems like to be the meta here. Like the let's duke it out. Let's box each other. You know, let's fight all day. And I'm surprised that yet we have not seen a Paquito pop up. It's been a lot of, you know, these options, especially the Yu Zhongs. But still, even then, like, there's still a lot of options available in the XP lane. So we'll see kind of what adjustments are going to be made. I think still, even with this lineup, even with the way the bans went, I know we were surprised ourselves, but this is interesting to see because it's the closest so far that we've seen two teams kind of go. Again, when you look at, you know, match one, match two, they had their own, you know, uniqueness to it, but overall it was very strong showings of one team where a team was not even able to dance off on the objectives. This is the first time we've actually seen that so far in day one, you know, as it's the last match. And it was nice to see because even when they get to those Lord dances, it's not your typical Lord dance. You know, it's not something that you're used to seeing. And even with the lineups that they've presented themselves with, it's just it's an interesting take on it. So I think, you know, as we wait for the draft for game 2, I want to think how we can see our first game 3, you know, like how can we get there? And I think part of that, once again, is really what is secured for Ivory Coast. First pick for them was you remember off the top of my head? I know we've been casting for a while here. First pick, they banned out the first pick. Luoyi was a first pick. And then, that's when they were like, they were hovering over the gourd after that. But they ended up locking in another magic. So I think it was almost to a point where it's like, you almost just have too much kind of magic damage. Like Faramis, I think there could have been something better than the Faramis. Like if you wanted to go double magic, something better than the Faramis. That was still a lot open, you know, and I think that would have worked out better for them.
I think the easiest answer, if they wanted a roamer that can still deal magic damage, that can still output a lot of damage, is Edith, right? I mean, we saw the massive concern that I had in the draft right after they picked up the Faramis was the fact that the Netherrealm has been changed. Back then, the base HP that you get from the Netherrealm is just obnoxious, right? You don't really have a lot of magic scaling anyways back in the day. So the Faramis roam makes sense. You can go for the normal, you can even go for a little bit of tankiness in there, and you can just rely on the base Netherrealm HP. But after the change, you're very reliant on the magic scaling for that Netherrealm HP. And you can see every single time Flash for Dead, well, at least in the early game, he was able to, you know, utilize a Netherrealm. But in towards the mid to late stages, that Netherrealm was... it might as well have not been there because it really had almost zero impact. It actually acted as another CC ability for the enemy team, right? Because when you lose that Netherrealm HP, you're all silenced, and that gives so much more space, so much more opportunities towards the opposing team, this time Djibouti, to just use a Furious Dive on top of the silenced members so that once they get out of the silence, they get knocked up. On top of that, they have a Minuan's Fury as well, and then the Roger, who's just waiting for them to not be silenced, for him to finally get his hands on them. And definitely the Faramis in the roam. I'm not a big fan of that pick, but you know, we did give it the benefit of the doubt. I think in game number 1, they were still trying to experiment, trying to read out their opponents. But now something more classic like an Edith could have worked, right? I think that's kind of the pattern that we were seeing from the side of Ivory Coast, though. they're kind of overthinking in a lot of these picks. With a lot of these picks, they're overthinking. They want another, another layer of HP to play with the Netherrealm, but they maybe forgot that they needed the snowball with this composition. If they do want to bank on that Fairness, he needs to get enough gold through the assists and kills with the roam items to actually build damage to make that Netherrealm impactful in the later stage of the game. I thought it was going to be good in the mid game because they were able to play around the winning conditions of Djibouti. Quick recap of that game in the early game. They were always able to get the win because their burst damage was sufficient. But when we got into the mid game, when some of these magical defense items have been bought, some of these physical defense items as well, when they were actually able to stay alive in these team fights longer than the cycle of cooldowns from the members coming in from the side of Djibouti, that's when they got the win, right? So for Djibouti, they're very reliant on the first, just initial burst in the team fight. If they don't get the initial burst and the instant execution with the Roger, they falter. And that's what we saw. But then, again, when Djibouti got their second power spike in items, the Divine Glaive, these penetration items, it all fell flat again for Ivory Coast.
Yeah, I like that's exactly a good kind of point of that timeline, because for a while, when you have a Fairness across from you, I think that was just literally the job. When you lock in that Amon, it's like not only are you putting pressure on the gold lane, but part of the job is literally just to get the Netherrealm out. Because like if I put enough pressure with my endless shards, even get the Netherrealm out, like that ultimate alone was a big piece of the puzzle for that lineup from Ivory Coast. So if it's out of the picture before a fight even breaks out, you have solved a huge problem ahead of you, a huge obstacle in winning those team fights. And so a lot of times it was literally just being pressure from Swag Boy to get Netherrealm out. And if it's like, oh, well, my job's done there, then I'll go find gold lane. I'll get a kill there. And that's kind of what unfolded. And I think, even going back to our discussion before the game started, this is what I'm talking about when so far from just the teams here from the Africa regional qualifiers, you have these junglers, and it's funny that they, at least from last match and then this one,
Swag and Swag Boy,
swag in their name, and they're like playing these swaggy heroes. They're playing these swaggy heroes. They're pulling things off. They're making things work because, let's be honest, a lot of people have had enough seeing Fredrin Barretts.
I've had enough seeing those picks.
Yeah, I know. Sentiment shared, and I think like that's what's so great about it, because you're seeing some of these different picks, but the way that these teams kind of adapt that in the lineup as a whole is what's so nice to kind of see unfold. You know what I mean? Like, you pick up an Amon, then we're going to cover it. We're going to cover our grounds well. And a lot of that is, again, the Yuzhong. Like, they have the Yuzhong, great initiator, great peeler if they need to, start things up in the front if you want to. And overall, it just kind of all falls into place with how they're playing. And I love that this identity is already forming just in day one. So and that's what I'm saying. Like, as we wait for a draft for game 2, we are going to see some new faces even tomorrow when we're casting day number 2. And I hope this trend just continues on, because it is very refreshing to see. And it's funny because when we had the interviews earlier, and I know you mentioned this earlier, like looking forward to the interviews. It's funny because these guys watch like all the competitive MLBB that happens. And so to hear their words of them, like, preparing for this and trying new things and new strategies, or trying to emulate certain things, but have their own spin on it, I think that's very refreshing, at least for us. I know, like, as we go through the African regional qualifiers too, a lot of the viewers will be watching the VODs like later, right? Because we have to consider like time zones, and we know that there's a ton of fans out on our parts of the world that will watch VODs like the next day, and they're going to see some very interesting stuff. And the funny thing is, I know at least here in the Philippines, there's all these discussions. Like, this happened even last year with IESF. They'll see these lineups and they'll post them like on groups online, and they'll have like full-on discussions, and like all the smart people will break down all the stuff that's going on. And then in in those groups and in those things that people see, who knows what coach or analyst is going to see that stuff and then possibly bring it out in the future tournaments. So I think that's so exciting to see what these teams are bringing to the table here. So we jump into the draft for game number 2. It's still the Lolita ban, by the way. So I'm really wondering about that, man. I'm like, what's going on with the Lolita? I get what she can do. I get what she's capable of, but maybe this is just a pure respect thing, again, between these two teams.
Game number 1, when it's banned out, you could say, oh, okay, maybe it's just a strange ban that they don't like to go up against. But when it happens twice,
Twice?
I think at this point it has to be respect to Ivory Coast, right? There has to be someone from Ivory Coast, maybe it's Flash for Dead, who has been able to utilize the Lolita. So, yeah, we'll say. We'll see if he is actually that good on the Lolita. Maybe in the next few matches that we get to cast, maybe tomorrow when we get to see a Lolita left open against Ivory Coast, but hold up, Ivory Coast, it does seem like they have left the ban. They did not ban in their first ban did not go through.
Strat.
Okay, that might be a strat, right? I mean, technically we did see that as well. As high of a level as the World Championship Grand Finals. If you remember, it was one ban that was not used, and they ultimately were able to win that game. So now with the Barats ban, it seems like it's still the same template that Djibouti are going for. Still with the Lolita into the Barats. Their last ban on the red side in game number 1 was the Moskov. So let's see if they will do the same thing this time around with the Moskov as well. Or perhaps do they want to pick it up for themselves? And maybe because of the Loyi still also being left open, do they want to try to pick it up for themselves on the blue side here? Because it does seem like from their style of playing, they would actually benefit a lot from getting the Loyi. They've been looking to go for these creative angles, flanking the enemy team with the Amon, with the Roger as well. Never mind, Amon and Roger banned out. The Roger was banned out earlier, the Amon as well now will be respected after that game. He was able to find so many crazy flanks, Swag Boy, and a lot of crazy pincer maneuvers in the bottom lane. And Vinci definitely, I think, is the winning condition for Ivory Coast. So without the Amon, without the Roger, it does set up for a more traditional front-to-back composition for Ivory Coast. Maybe they can make the Clint work, but they have to respect this Loyi now. No Amon, no Roger, but still a lot of creative angles that they can look to flank with. And still, remember, we don't know, but Swag Boy should still have a lot of other swag picks in the assassin department in that jungle that can be used to find a creative angle to Vinci. So maybe, this is the key for them. Maybe go for a little bit more of the cover of Peel with a Minotaur. This time the Fredrin has been left open as well, and Fredrin has been an amazing pick for Peel, for cover, if you really want to go and double down on your front-to-back composition. So there you go, Fredrin, and it looks like they should lock down the Minotaur too.
Okay, so if I was going with this, I'd pick up the Baksha. I'd probably go Baksha and just deal with this utility versus utility. You already have a great way to move around the map, like Baksha alone. But you pair it up with having a diversion available. That's great. Diggy gets picked up. They have an answer to the Minoan Fury setup, and even some of the the Peel you were talking about with the Fredrin, and they get the carrier right away because they know that if that is not picked up, to deal with these tanky health bars, you're gonna have a hard time. So good, actually, response. In dealing with the Fredrin and Minotaur being picked up right away. So with this, Djibouti actually in a good position first phase-wise. A little bit different, kind of the way these heroes are picked up, but still the logic is there, and that's really what's important, And on this last pick, are we going to see Beatrix? We haven't seen a Beatrix in a while. I mean, we see her once in a while these days. Is this actually going to be locked in here?
Let's see if he does lock it in, and let's see if he does actually go for that spell. Okay, never mind. Yeah, he was on the Vengeance for a while there. That would have been an interesting one up against a carry. A lot of attack speed, so technically the Vengeance could work, but the matchup, Beatrix versus carry.
Yeah, I know you're a gold lane. I know you're a gold lane guy. How's the matchup? So, currently, current days, how is this matchup?
Currently, I would still say just based in lane, right? It should be the Beatrix who has a little bit of an edge. He can clear the wave, he can dictate the matchup. So technically the Beatrix can do whatever she wants, right? If she wants to just constantly shove, she can do that with the Bennett. But if she wants to poke down Shanks on this carry too, that's a very good way to play as well. Because he will be able to outrange Shanks and he will be able to dash away from that first skill that usually carry relies on to win out in the trade. So it's Beatrix. But the thing is, Djibouti have a Diggy, so it's not really going to be a 1v1 here. With the Diggy constantly being in the bottom lane, I think the Beatrix will be placed in a weak side position. But that's fine, because Beatrix, that's why you kind of pick Beatrix. It's a very flexible pick, not only in the way that you can play her in team fights, but mainly in lane. If you get bullied by your opponent, if the enemy team has a Diggy, you're still able to clear out these waves, and you can actually prevent a lot of dives from happening. But that being said, those are traditional dives, not dives with a diversion. So still, a lot of creativity. Exactly. A lot of creativity that Djibouti has in their lineup could be used to destroy the rules that maybe Vinci has in his mind in the normal Beatrix matchup.
Man, the diversions from Djibouti. That's going to be tough, you know? Tough to deal with that.
I'd win.
And, yeah. I'd win. And I think that's the biggest kind of like obstacle when you have a Beatrix, or actually just gold lane in general, is when you're playing against the Luo Yi, because it's already hard enough like positioning wise, you know, and then you have diversions now to worry about. That's a big factor here. So what's this mid lane that they're going to pick up from Ivory Coast? Is it the Veil? I think they're actually going to go with this. And play it into Nod when I like this. Xavier would also work out really well. This is what I'm saying, man.
Yes.
Healthy meta. Love it. Mid lane, we're seeing a lot of different things pop up, and now the Xavier comes through and into the Dairoth as well. This is leaning towards, I feel like things always get crazy, Mirko, like second phase. Like second phase, and then usually they don't wait. Like first phase is a little bit slower. They wait, you know, for the timer a little bit. Then second phase is just like boom, 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 locked in. So Dairoth jungle is something that, so I don't know how you feel even out there, you know, and when you're in the league for Indonesia, but jungle Dairoth, it takes a certain composition for it to work. This might be a great answer, like Terizla, obviously lock down things with penalty zone. You can line up that Abysm Strike better, but still, it's a little bit tough. And we have to talk about too that the matchup with Fredrin, you know, to deal with it. Now, if you go in 1v1 the Fredrin, you're most likely going to win on the Dairoth if you can pull things off. Again, we don't know what emblem set he's also going to roll with, but this is interesting. The lineup alone from Djibouti is interesting already, because if the Terizla is not able to get the setups he's looking for, you know, it's a little tough to fight those. But again, we always have to factor in diversion from a Luo Yi, because that can set so many things up alone, depending on how you, I like to say, deliver the package, you know, whoever you're going to send on forward. And this is a glue locked in last pick now for Ivory Coast. So I'm going to ask you real quick, which lineup are you feeling? Because both these are very different.
It is. It's very, very different. And honestly, in this game, I think Ivory Coast have actually drafted in a way where it actually plays towards their winning condition. If they wanted to play for Vinci, if they wanted to cover for Vinci, I think this is the lineup to do it, right? On top of, obviously, the Minions Fury and the Fredrin having so much cover, they have the glue. So they have ways to actually try to force out that time journey from the Diggy before the fight even starts. And remember, with going up against a Diggy, you want to try to overload the Diggy with a lot of CC. Technically, the Xavier can do that too, right? The Mystic Field, if he places it down, shoots it, gets that immobility field out, Diggy will be kind of forced to use that time journey in a lot of different spots. And also, we did see the tendency for Ivory Coast to be able to just hold off Djibouti up until a point where they can get to their item power spike. So at this point, for Ivory Coast, they've got a solid mid game. If they can wait and weather the storm up until that mid game, I think Ivory Coast can take us to our first game 3.
I'd love to see it, man. You know, I get to a game 3, but we'll see what unfolds here as we jump into the Land of Dawn. It is once again the match between Djibouti and Ivory Coast. Right now, match point for Djibouti as they won game number 1 here. And as things get situated again between these two teams, we're going to have to look exactly how this lineup comes into play, how it unfolds. You know, the fact too that you have this Diggy, Mirko hit on it really well. part of the job is just like what we saw from the previous game, but on the flip side, it was, you know, you have to get this time journey out. Whereas the previous game, it was all about the Nether Realm. Getting the Nether Realm out early was part of the job, you know, especially from Swag Boy. So now for Djibouti, they're the ones who have to be able to play around that massive ultimate, the time's journey, to deal with, you know, Flash for Dead coming in with the Minoan Fury and dealing that. Now we saw too, Flash for Dead already used his flicker very early on. So, you know, he must have had to do that defensively, didn't catch it, but this is, I would say, even with the lineup that they have, they're so tanky, man. Like, you're talking about a Fredra and a Minotaur and a Glue to be available for this. And, you know, Xavier, a hero you don't see pop up as often anymore, but still very valuable in the entire map threat that he brings, even with Donning Light. Like, I think, you know, just having the Mystic Fields alone are already really good. Especially dealing with the Diggy here, especially when it's in, you know, that enhanced form, it's that much bigger form. They could really play around that pressure. It just takes time. Like, that's the thing about Xavier. I think he's, you know, one of those mages that takes a little more time to really get him to scale up, to build up. And that build path that Shin takes is also going to be very important for this matchup.
That's why I really like the way that they're actually approaching this game for Shin. And for Flash for Dead, take a look at Swag Boy, who's rotated over, finding Shin, forcing him to flicker as well, almost getting him with the first kill, but not a taunt, and the peel comes down. Swag Boy will be caught in the Mystic Field, and look at that, Angie straight onto an Appraiser's Wrath to pick up the first blood in game number 2. Ivory Coast strikes first.
Great flicker from him, so this might actually be able to secure themselves the objective. Looks like it's going to do just that. So Ivory Coast coming out swinging. Get that first objective, get the first kill, first blood as well. Shin, I actually thought he was just going to get taken down, but very good defensive flicker used earlier on. So with that, things slowly fall into place. It is early on, but that small lead actually could have a potential to build up here. And, you know, this is where, once again, for Djibouti, you know, now I'd win, just farms up, does his thing, really just trying to get that level 4, trying to get that diversion available to the team here, because I think that's really where the trump card is for Djibouti. And anytime you have this low E pop up is really how you're going to kind of try to even confuse the enemy team that you're dealing with this. So there it is, level 4 available. Going to take a trip, possibly up top, does not commit to it. Got the information as well, so it looks like there could possibly be a forced fight up here eventually too. There's a whole lot of bodies from both teams up here. Of course, the XP laner still on the bottom side. You have Dexter, went back to base, and we'll be going back. Hold on, fight though. Wow.
Good assassination with the Abyssum Strike. That's a Minute's Fury to knock him up into the Appraiser's Wrath, but Swag Boy still able to escape. Good time journey to give him the shielding, even in the Beerus Passion committed by Vinci earlier. And this is where, you know, for Ivory Coast, they gotta stay chill, right? Because they won the early game, that's great and all, but they have to remember that their composition still gets online in the mid game. Even if they get 1-2 kills in the early game, that will, you know, give them a faster way to get to the item power spikes, but it's still not instant. They still have to be patient. They still have to understand that those item power spikes are what are the prime conditions for them to win the game. So don't get too hasty, don't walk up too aggressive, and for Shin especially, be careful. You have to understand that flicker is your main, that's the main ability you're going to be using in the early game. You need to wait for the flicker to be up before you start opening up these bushes. And honestly, never open up the bush, Shin. All right, just play in the back, as far back as you possibly can. Use a Dawning Light, man. Play in the base.
It's probably because he's playing the Gojo skin, man. Like he's feeling a little extra swag for Shin because he's playing Gojo.
He's playing Gojo against I'd win.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, you know, with that, Turtle's gonna be started up. Brun, oh, look at the diversion.
Good slam, pass combo, and Abyssum Strike though into the back line with the split. He's still able to escape, and that's a trade down. Vinci, the Beerus Passion picking up a double kill as he flickers forward on denied. Win Appraiser's Wrath. One final swing of that sword to take I'd win down up top, and that should be a free turtle to Ivory Coast.
Ivory Coast. And I was thinking, great diversion, but man, were they ready for that? Ivory Coast went in, they set things up really well. Dawning Light was laid on top of multiple bodies. That's exactly what Shin needed, you know, and like you were saying, play from the back. And that's exactly what he did there. So now he's got those 4 assists. He's feeling pretty good. He's scaling up. He does just get his enchanted talisman. So now he's got that online, got a little more cooldown available, plus the mana. He can start spamming, you know, some of those abilities and kind of build up off that. And that's really, once you get to that mid game, like you were talking about, mid game spike for both the teams is actually pretty decent here. And Dexter, oh, doing work, flash for head, flickers out. So they disengage. We'll see. Ambitious 78-2 on this glue pick. We'll see exactly how this kind of plays out. We don't see glue too often. Oh, Brun.
Forcing a time journey. Well played by Angie. No neutral objectives to take, though. So, unfortunately, you know, there's... Oh, what happened? Vincey gets the Renner Apathy. Good snipe from Vincey up top. Beautifully done.
As we just said, Brun able to get out, but... Man, those are the bad tricks. The plays, why she was so dominant, you know, even at one point during the whole M4 and everything, why she was picked up so much. So she's still able to make those plays, you know, and that's something they have to look out for, because right now Djibouti kind of struggling, dealing with this, what's being thrown at them, and nothing massive, nothing huge gold lead-wise built up. 9 win, that's definitely going to be spotted out. Oh, man.
Good shutdown from
the
Swag
burst.
Boy. Good pincer maneuver, yeah. The burst is still definitely there, man. I think they found their angle. They've been trying to go into the mid lane. They've been trying to shut down the Xavier, that they completely forgot about the Beatrix. I think they tunnel vision on the mid lane, and because of that, Vincey has been able to get 3 kills. But that's a pretty good shutdown for Swag Boy. And Shanks now is getting a few hits onto the turret up top. Kind of already, at this point, delaying the turtle take, right? Because Angie and Shin have been forced to rotate up top. Sure, they will have the movement speed by the river, but it seems like Swag Boy wants to go straight for the turtle here. He's got to be careful, though. He's jumped onto Flash for Dead, who doesn't have the flicker this time around. Ambitious 78 still hovering over, and Swag Boy has got to be careful because Angie can just walk up. He walks up, gets a taunt down. But doesn't connect to anybody, not yet now. He finds the taunt on towards Minus Fury, though, into the back line, but a time journey helps him, and they just obliterate through the frontliners. Take a look at Ambitious 78, even with the split, he gets brought back by the reverse time, and Swag Boy gets the Abyssum Strike to get rid of Shin. No flicker, he was burnt out in the mid lane earlier. Djibouti, they found a way to come back.
Djibouti finds a way to come back. What a decisive team fight that is, too. Diversion play going to be sent up top, sending in the package. But, man, talk about how things just kind of turned on head. Djibouti down. Like I was saying, you know, the gold lead wasn't anything crazy. But with that whole exchange and then getting the objective on top of it, man, is that a swing for them? It looks like there could still possibly be some fight even on the top side if Ivory Coast wants to hold down that tier 1. But these are, like... Just look how many items were picked up from that last exchange. So this is a crucial point in the game as we approach that 9-minute mark. We're about a minute and a half away from this Lord here. Big items being picked up, big power spikes and timings being hit by both teams. And so when you're looking at it, you're like, man, the fighting power from Djibouti is great. Here's the items. And you can see this, even with Vincey, he went second item, Wind of Nature. He only had the BOD, goes Wind of Nature, gets the defense that he needs, and wants to be able to play against that. So even with that, it's really like if his timing is good to deal with Swag Boy, then hopefully he stays alive. Uh-oh, mid lane.
Abyssum Strike again, canceling the Minutes Fury, and even Shin is forced to flicker. Angie got obliterated, penalty zone. Flicker onto the back, finding Shin, who was already flickerless, was baited out earlier. And now look at Diversion. They're going up top. Vincey, where can you run? You have a flicker, but then Brun just flickers forward, gets the reverse time, and it just pins him down under that turret. Swag Boy, so much damage in his arsenal. He just pops in that skill too. He doesn't even need to use his other skills. Nice, so we can basic attack Vincey out of the land of Dawn.
Dairoth is scary. Like, this is, you know, as I was talking about it, you know, the Dairoth in the jungle is something you don't see often, you know, but when it is picked up, usually you see it very specialized. And what I mean by that is certain players specialize in a Dairoth jungle. It takes a certain player to pull it off. And right now, Swag Boy, another Swag player here, is pulling things off with this Dairoth to the point where even for Flash for Dead, it doesn't look tanky. So Dexter holding down this front side. Lord now spawning up. It looks like they're going to go ahead and rotate up in this. Keep an eye on Swag, where he goes. Because Swag Boy, like the setups he's done. Oh.
Without the Abyssum Strike. That was just a jump in. Mystic Field not able to connect. No, jumping on the shit. How's the Abyssum Strike? This was what it was for. Now we're at the time journey. That's a triple kill for Swag Boy. Looking for the Maniac. As Ambitious 78 is still able to flicker out. Good Bennett shots onto Swag Boy. Finally getting a shutdown and a trade back. But take a look at Shanks, who's been free farming. Now picks up the Malefic Roar and is continuing this push. That mid lane, man. Tier 2 will be taken down just by the minions. And it looks like they're going to set up for a take onto the Tier 2 in the bottom lane as well. Can Vincey still carry in the later stage? Can even Shin? Wait, no, they're just going to go for the Lord. Bursting it down instantly. No jungle, no problem. No Swag Boy, but Shanks, it will be able to deal enough damage. Melting the Lord like it's nothing.
Swag Boy did his job. You know, and as I was saying before that broke out, keep an eye on Swag Boy. And then he goes and gets a triple. And it almost was a Maniac, but unfortunately got stopped by Vincey. Great play from Vincey there to keep things under control. But man, Swag Boy got all he wanted in that exchange, because he knew too, with that, the team would be able to secure the Lord. That they did. And now they'll go ahead and get ready to march in with this. And it's getting tough, because now for Ivory Coast, they still have a pretty good lineup to hold things together the best they can. They can clear waves actually pretty well, even utilizing the Dawning Light. And then, of course, Vincey here. But if they get forced on into a fight in a bad position, this is kind of very crucial timing for them. They have to be very careful on how they approach and answer the pressure being put on them from Djibouti. So how do they play around this? Lord already worked on, taken care of. Oh, my goodness.
Nightwind, another dispersion, rotation penalty zone onto 4 members. Dexter finds an amazing set right into the Flicker time journey to grant them that anti-CC, and they just plow through the frontliners of Ivory Coast. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, Shanks is able to just handle all of the other members. Vincey and Ambitious 78 all alone. And look at Swag Boy now, doing that damage onto the turret, base turret as well. Vincey forced back just with a dash from Swag Boy. And it looks like even in the mid lane, Djibouti will be able to take it down with no problem. Vincey has been zoned completely away from these base turrets. And another wave will be crashing down into the bottom lane. They might be able to get all 4 or all 3 base turrets. All 4 with the base in mind. Mystic Field of Bennett's Rage locking them down, and that might be a throw. The base is still alive. And look at that, one last hit should do it, but they can't find it. Dexter falls under the turret. 1 HP for the crystal, and they keep it alive.
What? 1 hit. 1 hit is all they needed. Here in the Philippines, they say isang hit na lang. What happened? I think they were going to actually, like, I don't know if the lockdown was just too much, but look at this swing back. So they're not going to end the game off this, but wow, what a turnaround already. Ivory Coast will be able to get this tier 2 in the mid lane, get resources. Dawning Light going to be used, but Djibouti back in the game. How did they play around this? 30 seconds away from the Lord. That was massive for Ivory Coast, but also just a blunt, like that should have been the end of the game. We're talking about 1 HP on the base, literally. If they would have just looked at it the wrong way, the base should have exploded, but it didn't. So 10 seconds, you can see them already, Djibouti getting set up for this objective take. Even with that defense that Ivory Coast pulled off, they could still lose this fight. If Swag Boy gets a pick right away, this is troublesome. They have to approach this very carefully. Anghi getting in position. Swag Boy on the side.
Look at the waves, though. It's perfectly placed down. Time Journey coming down as well, and they all get pulled back by the dispersion into Swag Boy. My God, Angie. His HP bar, where did it go? Swag Boy, so much damage in his inventory. So much damage output that he can just throw out there, and that'll be a free Lord. No jungler for Ivory Coast. And this might just be the final Lord of the game, Naisu.
Yeah, we've seen this earlier. So right now, they're going to go ahead and be able to just kind of maintain the waves. They got some of the immortalities online. And really, because the base is still half health, this is very tough for Ivory Coast, like we saw in the previous game 1. They have to be able to deal with this, but the push in very quickly, because all it's going to take is that Lord to push in, and then they focus, they tower lock, they get the base down. So how does Ivory Coast approach this Lord of the mid side? They have to force the fight. All of abilities available, all ultimates available. Here they go.
That's a jump by Swagboy into the midst of it all. Minus Fury, they're going to be used up as well as the penalty zone connects on the Shimmer. He's still able to flick around. Beer's Passion, gunning them down. But look at Shanks, who stays objective. He needed just a few more shots onto the base. And he finally gets it. A bit delayed, but Djibouti gets it done. A comeback victory up against Ivory Coast in Game 2 for a clean sweep.
Man, once again, a sweep to end the day here. Day number 1 for the Africa Regional Qualifiers for online. Road to Casablanca here. Congratulations to Djibouti, man. What a performance. I mean, this, I will still say, this was the closest series between these two teams that we have had tonight. And I, still going to stick with the fact, too, that this is really kind of a good preview, hopefully, of what's in store for the next 3 days ahead of us, after we finished off day number 1 here, because it's been really refreshing and fun to watch these own versions of their metas pop up and be utilized. And this very well could have been a game 3. Like, we could actually been heading to game 3. Well, I would say there's 2 things. It should have been a game over earlier, before the Lord take even, right? It was 1 HP, literally. But I would just say overall, in terms of series matchup between two teams, this was the closest that we had here. And, just unfortunately for Ivory Coast, they weren't able to hold it together long enough to pull it through. But, that's the thing. I think even when you look at just Djibouti, the lineup, the way they played from game 1 to this game in game 2, very good to see them kind of unfold and use this kind of lineup that they have, something that even we might not be used to seeing. I know, like we said, we see the Dairoth pop up once in a while, but we're going to take a trip back to game number 1 as we look at the highlights from that first game, and you'll see what I'm talking about, man. A lot of this was set up so well, and Swagboy had a huge point in this game like he did in game 2. And, with this one, it was really good layering of just the composition that they had, kind of unfolding. And we're talking about even the fact that, you have good tankiness up front. This is the great play where Vinci died earlier.
Yeah.
And then here's Swagboy. Like, that almost feels demoralizing. Like, if you've ever been playing the gold lane and that's what happens to you, you're kind of really trying to fight off the tilt. You're trying to not let yourself get tilted after that, because that's what an Amon does. And even the layering of abilities, like I was talking about, the Windstorm alone, that Veil pick from Nah, I'd win, the way he was landing things. This is, I think, the lineup even. Yeah, this is the perfect lineup here. Gets that down, gets that double. Like, the placements from every single of these members throughout game 1 and game 2 was on point. And I think that's the thing. Like, it just took them a little bit longer from our previous 2 series, but overall they were playing their compositions really, really well, and it showed. There was even times, like we said in game 1, where Ivory Coast, they showed signs of life, but it's like they couldn't get past that Nah, I'd win. Like, a lot of that time on the Veil, things were just set up so well that it was kind of tough to deal with. And then, of course, you have Annoying Fury. And really, it was just the transition once we got past this mid-game into the late game, Swagboy's job was just to get Netherrealm out. Once they got Netherrealm out, they just relied on Nah, I'd win to kind of set things up. Or if it was Shanks, sometimes it was Shanks actually getting Netherrealm off later on. Like, this is Dexter shining on this Yuzhong pick that we've seen time and time again today. So overall, you just look at the series for Djibouti, man, things were just lined up, played really well. And I think that's the thing, is like, even though this was a rather longer game than what we've seen, like Ivory Coast, I feel like they just were not able to get the early leads that they were looking for. Like, a lot of the times it was them kind of answering things, trying to catch back up to whatever Djibouti was doing, and there was times where they were able to turn things over, turn things on their head. It's just they weren't able to get the start that they were looking for.
I think it's the biggest problems for most teams in MLBB in general, right? Most teams that are starting things off, that are starting things competitively, because they will be able to get an early game lead. They understand how to play the game when it is still in its template form, right? The early game is very template. You still fight for neutral objectives, and it's still a very one-dimensional way to play. But when we get into the mid game, when you need to look for creative angles, when you need to look for that macro advantage, that's where a lot of the amateur teams, they start to struggle. And I think I definitely saw that from Djibouti, because it's not like they were losing all the way from the early game. Even with the Xavier and the Beatrix against the Diggy, we were expecting the Beatrix to get bullied, Shin obviously on the Xavier to get bullied as well, but they were able to do some good things, controlling the neutral objectives as well. I think most of the early neutral objectives in game number 2 at least went towards the side of Djibouti. But then when we get into that mid game, man, Djibouti were just way too clean. Sorry, I was talking about Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast were able to secure a lot of the neutral objectives in the early game, but Djibouti, they were consistently just able to trade on the map, right? And I think I have to give a massive shout out to Djibouti on how they used the diversion, on how they used the Lo Yi, because it was very different to how we're used to seeing the Lo Yi. I think for the most part, Lo Yi, we see Lo Yi as a way to engage, right? It's basically another way to engage by sending a frontliner into the back, an assassin into the back to get these flanks and then to get a one-shot. But for Djibouti, because they were losing, there was no reason for them to really go for any of these bombastic maneuvers, any of these desperate maneuvers to send a frontliner into the back. All the time, Na I'd Win was just using a diversion to reposition the team, whether it be after getting a turret in the mid lane to go straight up top to get another objective. It's just a very objective-based way to use the diversion, right? There was no crazy diversion when they started losing. Because in the early game, yeah, we saw these 3-man diversions, the normal usage of the diversions, but it's the quick adaptation of Na I'd Win that really impressed me in this game on the Lo Yi, because usually it doesn't matter if you're losing or winning, you always want to try to gamble that lead back with the diversion. But yeah, no, he just played it so well. Discipline, used it for pickoffs instead of just big team fights, and that reposition really played a big factor onto how they were able to actually come back in this game. And also another very underrated thing about the Lo Yi is you're really good in front to back compositions, man. I think in these team fights, he's very underrated. A lot of people are looking at Swag Boy, me included, but if you take a look at the highlights here, Na I'd Win, so much damage output was given by him just from the dispersions and rotations. Even here, I remember, yeah, Flash for dead. He got completely obliterated by Na I'd Win into half HP, forcing that motivation roar, and then Swag Boy comes in for the execute.
Yeah, and you saw that too. Like his second item was Glowing Wand. So part of his job for Na I'd Win was literally just to kind of, you know, whittle down these tankier members and then let Swag Boy shine, you know, and that's kind of what unfolded there. Not only that, but the way that the passive works with Lo Yi and things kind of, when you get that combo off, it pulls them back. So it was just a good, again, layering of utilizing the kits of these heroes, the composition that they drafted. And it shows a lot of that mastery. Once again, you know, the mastery, how they made this work. That was so beautiful, by the way. 4-man, I think, yeah, 4-man? Yeah, 4-man penalty zone right there, locking that in. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the whole team just had highlights themselves. The highlight here, highlight there. All of the heroes that they had. This is where, you know, you're thinking, all right, like it's gonna end, right? Like Dexter's got this, right? But you know, it didn't happen in terms of ending that game, and this is where it does. Because again, when you're talking about a base being at half health, Lord comes in, they're gonna push it in, force things in, and then they can just end the game, right? So you really have to kind of fight that Lord before it even gets there, and hope that you can turn things around before it gets close enough to the base. So, you know, looking at the highlights, that's the thing is. This is a lineup from Djibouti that everybody, I would just say this, everybody pulled their weight massively throughout from game 1 to game 2, because this was a lot harder than what some of our previous winners from tonight like had to go through, right? Even just in